morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning session. So the theme for this morning session is Discovery to Deployment. And what does that mean? Passion, purpose, preparation, and position. Step into your place. It's the time for you to manifest your God-ordained purpose using your gifts, talents, and passion to be an innovative problem solver wherever you go, on the job, in your business, ministry, school, media, and the community. Every woman needs to understand the season of life they are in and must invest time in preparation for the new opportunities coming their way. God has prepared a place for you, a position of power and influence. Today, our panel will be exploring the process of discovery to deployment. Please join me in welcoming our very first speaker, Adiola Enikon Oshelu. Adiola Enikon Oshelu is a social entrepreneur, an inspirational speaker, and an inspiring author. She's very passionate about inspiring people to live a fulfilled life and driven by women and children empowerment. Her passion and belief in mentoring and inspiring others led to the birth of the GEMS Incorporated. The GEMS Inc. is a mentoring and leadership program in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area for girls and young ladies between the ages of 11 and 18. Recently, the organization expanded and added a new initiative for women between the ages of 35 and 50 with the goal of educating and empowering these women to reignite the passion they once had, dream again, launch successful businesses, and live a healthy and fulfilled life. When she's not actively working with the youth, speaking or training, she enjoys reading, writing, and traveling. She is married with 3 adorable sons and currently resides in Greenbelt, Maryland. Please welcome Adiola Enikon Oshelu. Our second panelist is Isioma Joyce Dibia. Isioma was born to help others unlock their hidden treasures and shape their world for greatness through her speaking and writing. She is an international speaker, convener of Shaping the Sectors, author, and a lover of God. Over the past 4 years, she has been privileged to speak and host conferences in the United States and Nigeria with the whole world as her target. Through those experiences, she has been privileged to empower individuals step into the fullness of their destiny. Her mission is to shape individuals and communities for greatness through purpose and discovery, faith, and nation-impacting projects. Targets areas including youth empowerment, women, and faith building. She is happily married to an amazing man, Emmanuel Dibia, who supports her vision. You can find out more at www.isiomajoyce.com. Please help me welcome Isioma Joyce Dibia. Our third panelist is Tammy Ollie. Tammy Ollie is a certified relationship coach from the World Coach Institute. She is passionate about helping people live beyond their past and strengthening their relationships. She's also a certified marriage on the Rock leader and a certified Symbis facilitator in which she works with other counselors to offer personalized premarital counseling to couples. She is happily married and a lover of sweet things. Occasionally, you can find her at Cold Stone with strawberry blondie ice cream. You can also find her on social media at Talk with Tammy. Please help me welcome Tammy Ollie. And now we're going to welcome our mediator for this session, Pastor Nike Israel.
Okay, it's on now. What a beautiful day. Thank you all for coming. We're very excited to have everyone here. I'd like to first of all start off by just thanking each of our panelists for honoring us today. It's such a pleasure to have you guys here. This last year, the feedback we got from, we had a panelist session last year and we had some question and answer, and we got the highest feedback because a lot of people thought it was a fantastic opportunity to really talk and to address issues. So just before I just give a context, Neri already spoke about what the focus of this session will be. It's called Discovery to Deployment. I just wanted to give you some house rules. We have a microphone here because I'm going to be asking some pertinent questions. But we also know that the purpose of this session is really for us to engage together. In some cases, you might hear certain things that you can identify with or what has been practical in your life. We'll give you 2 minutes to come to the front to share. If you have any unique questions to the panelists, something you're curious about, something you hear them saying that you just want for us to sort of touch more about it as well, we'll give you some time to do that. So I can either throw it open when we're ready to do that, please feel free, or if I see someone standing here, I'll pause. And so it's not, it's going to be very collaborative. We want everyone to feel very engaged in this session. Thank you so much. So, wow. So the first thing I'm going to do, I know we've heard your bio. We're on a panelist session. We're talking about discovery to deployment. I'll just give you each 7 minutes to just tell us briefly, what does this topic mean to you personally? And how do you feel you can identify with what we're talking about? So let me start off with this young man and work my way closer.
Good morning, everyone. So, the whole process of discovery to deployment.
Okay.
First of all,
I think the microphone, we're having some feedback with it. Maybe can we try and maybe use dual?
If you're not speaking, just turn it on.
Okay, much better. Thank you. So, first of all, when we think about an iPad, what is an iPad used for? It's a mini computer that we use for different things. When we think about a pen, we know that a pen is used for writing. That's the same way it is with our lives. For every single person here, God has a plan, God has a purpose. So if an inanimate object has a purpose, then we also have a purpose. So going into the whole process of discovering your purpose to actually deploying it, it first begins with the scripture, Ephesians 2 verse 10. Says says we are God's workmanship, created in Him to do the good works which are already predestined for us. I'm going to start a little bit with myself. I have a passion for helping people discover who they are and taking that to the next level. How did this begin? I remember, life when I was in elementary school, up until before I started deploying my potentials, I'll be that friend who would sit with you and do a 10-year plan. I'll be that friend who will tell you, hey, you know what? We can try this, we can try that. And then also, if you followed me on Facebook, I would write quotes, inspirational writings all day long. And so I began to discover, hey, I have something that's in me that I could actually use to impact people. And so what I did was I put it together and I came up with a brand. And through that brand, I was able to write books. I was able to reach out to people. And when I first started, I really didn't know much about what I was doing. But putting all of that together and realizing that I could actually use this to impact people has led me even to becoming more bolder, helping me to understand that God has a plan for my life. And using that plan will not only empower me, but empower all the people that I meet. So now, I'm sending you into the world as a sheep among wolves. So what does this actually mean? I started off, I wanted to, be in the Christian community, but I wanted to reach out to the world. So I had to come up with a brand that was not threatening to the world, but still sending out the same message. Not threatening to the world, but still going out there with the gifts and the calling that God has put in me, using that to equip them. So now I came up with a brand called Shaping the Sectors. And on that brand, I have my mission statement. I shape individuals and communities for impact. So what does this actually mean now going out into the world? I want to impact the world for Jesus, but by doing that, I need to be strategic about even how I go about it. So my message is accepted not just only to the body of Christ, but going out into the world, because reaching out to the world is actually the target that God has called us into. So, but first of all, before I can step into any of that, I first need to know who I am. I first need to know that God has a plan for me. I first need to know that, the plan that God has for me might not even be accepted to the people who used to know me before I first began. But it's not my problem to explain myself to you. My goal is to go out into the world with the gifts that God has given me. So just last three things to say in regards to position. Our mission is to reach the world for Christ. Sometimes I feel like when I first started out, I feel like I was centered only towards the church. So position now for me means reaching the whole world. People who don't know Jesus and going up there with the message. And once I go up there with the message, I might not say Christ starting out, but the more you begin to get to know me, I'm being strategic about bringing you closer to me and bringing you to Jesus. So that's the one thing about position that I really want to hammer on. We as Christians, the body of Christ, need to be very intentional about strategically position ourselves to reaching the whole world for Christ. Because it says, go out into the world and preach the gospel to every nation. So that's...
We can feel the passion. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I know we're going to have a lot more that you want to say will come up, of course, as we go on. But thank you very much. So I'm going to move over to Temi Oli. 7 minutes for you to just share with us.
Sure.
Can you hear me? Yes. Oh, okay. So the term discovery to deployment, and to me, it's really similar to a lot of what you said. But how I started my business, or what it is that I do, it all really came from the early onset of always asking God, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And I've been at a lot of prayer retreats and places where they'll say, ask God to show you your purpose. I'm like, God, you really need to show my purpose. I need to walk in my plan and walk in the purpose that you have for me. And then eventually, I think at some point last year, I started to realize, well, what God told me was I was using the term purpose wrongly. That when I asked him what my purpose is, I'm simply asking him to show me the reason he created me. And he's like, I already showed you that in the Bible when he said, let us make man in our image, and he made us to have dominion. So your purpose is to have dominion over everything that I have given to you, and not for those things to have dominion over you. Your purpose is to be the light. And when I started to get that, it then began to shift for me to actually saying, okay, so what is my passion then? Because everyone always says that, when you want to figure out what it is you want to do, you follow your passion, right? And I think I was watching TV one day and I heard Steve Harvey talk a little bit about passion, and that was when I had another eureka moment that I realized that, you can be passionate about something that you're not gifted in, but you can have, so when you think about your gift is something that you will be passionate about, but not everything that you're passionate about is what you're gifted in. So you can be passionate about basketball and playing basketball, but you might not be gifted in that area. So then I started to shift my question to, okay, what is my passion to what is my gift? What comes natural to me? What do people come to me for? And I started to realize that I have moments where I'm counseling people and coaching people, and I've had situations where even people going through trauma or trying to overcome sexual abuse, addiction, bad relationships and things of that sort will come to me for counseling. And every single time I'm done talking to them, they're always like, you really should start a counseling service. You really should start something. And you make it so easy for me to talk to you. And when I'm done talking to you, I have a clear idea of what to do next, what God is saying to me. So then it became, okay, I felt like that was what God was telling me to branch into. And when I heard that, the next thing that came to my mind, with a lot of us here, what we're supposed to be doing or what we want to do is you start to doubt yourself, or you have questions of, is it really what I'm supposed to do? You're scared pretty much to step out. And God asked me, what is it that is holding you back? What is your biggest fear? And I said, I don't feel qualified. And God said, what would it take for you to be qualified? And I said, knowledge. And then God said, then go out there and get it. So I'm saying all of this to say that, with every single one of us, we all have dreams, we all have things that we want to do. We have areas of gifting, we have things that God has gifted us with. And when we talk about our passion, it's more so actually asking God to show us what are the things that I'm gifted in that would allow me to have dominion over what you have called me to do, over what you have given to me. And when you start to discover the things that come natural to you, the things that are your giftings, some of that the next step will be to just start. And for me, what held me back from starting was fear. And so I had to go and get all the knowledge that I start training and start going to school and things of that sort. And whatever the next step for you is in terms of starting, whatever is holding you back, you need to figure it out so that you can actually get moving and get started. And which ties to preparation and positioning. You just have to constantly be in a place of constantly being prepared, constantly learning, constantly listening to what God is telling you, where He's sending you to. You don't want to be in a place where He's told you not to be in, and you don't want to be, you just want to constantly be in tune with what His Spirit is telling you, so that you are of value to what it is that He has called you to do. So that was pretty much how I landed at where I am with talking to you.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well said, well said. I'm really enjoying this.
Hello. Good morning again. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning again. I need some more energy. So my name is Diola Ario and Monshilu. I'm the founder of the Gems, like I said earlier. So what I'm going to do is just share a little story about myself and how I got here. So that way that can kind of help someone out there. Because a lot of times we hear the word passion and we hear the word purpose. And like my two sisters here talked about, sometimes we need to change both of them, and they do not necessarily mean the same thing. Like she said, I'm like, oh, okay, I like to share. Like, you're passionate about something that's not part of the purpose of God for your life. And if you're passionate about things that are actually bad for you, some people are passionate about drinking. That's not, I don't think that's not part of God's purpose for your life. So, the purpose in life is why you're created, like people shared. And a lot of times, actually, as Christians, I believe the purpose of God for our life is to fulfill God's mandate on earth. But we all now have different platforms to accomplish this. Some people choose singing, some people choose encouraging somebody else. And you don't have to be on a platform like, maybe you have a stage, you have a microphone, maybe you're sing. You could be just encouraging someone. Some people, their passion, their purpose is to actually raise leaders. And I mean, they're stay-at-home moms. And I'm just saying that because I hear that a lot. People sometimes reach out to me or they ask questions, or they feel that what they're doing is not necessarily God's purpose of their lives because no one is seeing it. For example, you know how it is being a stay-at-home mom. I'm not a stay-at-home mom, but a few months that I had to stay home with my kids, I was really praying and thanking God for the lives of my friends that are stay-at-home moms because I don't know how they do it. It's a lot of work. But most people don't see that. I'm just saying that to encourage everybody that whatever God has instilled in your heart to do, go for it. And it doesn't have to be on a platform. For me, for example, I mentor young girls, and I've been doing this for the past 11 years. I officially launched the business again 6 years ago. And I say the word again is when I started 11 to 12 years ago, most people didn't know that there was no social media. Because people come up to me sometimes and ask me that, okay, why is it that we're seeing Gen all over the place now? You guys are getting recognized here and there. And I'm like, it's been a work in process for so long. But because now social media makes things more visible, people think, oh my God, they just showed up from nowhere. So when I started 11 to 12 years ago, it was very informal. And that was because I had a passion for young girls. I was just always struggled when I see someone that's young, that doesn't have any vision for themselves, or they're walking around aimlessly, or they're just into boys, or they just don't have any self-worth. And let me track back. I'm a second of 4 girls. I went to an all-girls high school, for those that are from here, from Nigeria, call it secondary school. So I've always been among girls. That's just how it is. But God has a sense of humor, I have all boys. But going back, I've always had a passion to inspire, encourage people, and that kind of thing. When I graduated from college 18 years ago, my first job was a software engineer at Lockheed Martin. I did that for a while, but I knew something was missing. I love crunching numbers and working in front of the computers, but I also like talking. People don't realize that. They think I'm shy, but I do love having a good dialogue with people. I want to know about your life, what are you doing? I like to encourage people. So, somewhat up further, and I'm saying this story so you can see how sometimes we might not realize what our purpose is sometimes, but God gives us clues. And just be open to follow the process. You might think, oh my God, this is not it. Anyway, let me go back to this. So someone approached me one time and introduced a business to me. Most people know about it. It's Mary Kay. And then I was not a typical makeup person. I never used to wear makeup. But I love the products anyway. And I was already bored crunching numbers anyway, and I was new in Maryland, and I wanted something different to just meet people. So I started the business. When I started, it was a struggle for me because, like I said, I was extremely shy. And you know, if you're trying to sell something, it's not going to sell itself. You have to learn how to talk to people. So God used that platform for me to learn how to speak to people, how to do public speaking, how to encourage people. I went through all of my growing pains through that business, pretty much. And that's why I feel like I learned the resilience to be able to keep dreaming and not giving up. So I did that for a little bit. I became a director very fast. I got the cars and did all that. And after a while, I noticed that when I'm talking to my clients, or when I became a director and I'm trying to encourage you to go sell, all that we're doing is talking about what's going on in your life, how your husband is not allowing you to go sell, how they complain about you leaving the kids. So, and I noticed a lot of times it was most of the concerns that most of those women had to do with self-doubt and self-esteem. So one day I had a aha moment, like, you know what, instead of just sitting out here and just listen to all these issues that these women have, how about we handle it while they're younger? You know, it's a little more challenging trying to develop a healthy self-esteem for grown women. It's possible, but it's a little challenging. So that's kind of how I started with the GEMS. So I started that, I started nurturing and mentoring young girls, and that's gone from one thing to the other. About a year and a half ago, I had another boarding for women between the ages of 35 to 50. I felt like things were going very fast initially in my life, and then I felt like I had a moment that nothing was going on. It was like a stagnant, God was still working, but I just wasn't seeing anything. And then I had a lot of friends that were turning 40, and when I'm wishing them happy birthday, a lot of them were actually, most of them fell into two categories. The first category is either they're so fulfilled, they're excited about their life, they feel that things are going great. And the second category, which most people fell into, were they were like, oh my goodness, I've lost time. I'm 40-something years old now. What am I doing with my life? Or I've lost time, or I spent all my time with my kids and all that. And that's how I launched the new initiative. We call them Gen X, for women between 35 to 50. But going back to that, like I said,
Yes.
Okay, I'll stop.
But no, I'll let you run off your last thought.
Okay, so going back to that, I shared that journey to let you guys know that I didn't wake up one day and just said I was going to start a nonprofit for young girls. It went through my experiences. It went through trying different things to get there. Does that make sense? So for those of you that are still trying to figure out what am I supposed to be doing, if God brings suggestions, ideas to you, try it. It doesn't hurt. He will always, his word said that he will order our steps. But you got to be walking. It's not going to just pull your legs and start making a move. By you being obedient and taking one step or the other, sooner or later you discover your purpose.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Round of applause for this. Thank you so much. So we've heard a lot of very amazing and very nice things. Remember I said let's keep it real. I believe strongly that this is a room full of women of purpose, of passion, of multiple gifts. A lot of times when I interact with ladies, we find out that God has just blessed us as women. Even if we don't know what we should be doing, we'll find ourselves plugged in somewhere. But because we're in a season of stepping into your place, we want to make sure that we really are positioning ourselves. Part of the things that you guys have said is just really, really amazing. So I'm sure you've heard some stuff, so feel free if you want to make any comment or if you want to ask questions initially. So we start off if we have questions, please feel free. So let me say something. There was something that I think Tammy said about passion and gift. So I wanted to ask. Let me start off with Tammy. What do you do when you have several strong gifts? Some more obvious than the others, and by default, because I'm very sure there are people here who would say, I can sing, because Timmy I know can sing. I can design. I love to design. I'm very creative. And for some people, I have strong administrative and planning skills. And each of them, you have used it or deployed it at one time or the other, and you've done it very well. But you know that, you only have 24 hours. You do some, you get excited, it's not going the way you want, and you move to another one. So when you have several strong gifts, you've discovered your gift. How do you know which one to deploy at a particular point in time?
That's a good question. I think, so this is, my opinion is more so that I don't necessarily think that, I think that we have one main thing that we tend to do, but I don't necessarily think that we are only called to one thing. So like when you said like everything that God speaks to you to do, you start to do it, and sometimes there's a thread with all of these, and you learn different things with each thing that you're doing. And also knowing that every area that you are gifted in, everything has its own platform per se, and some of it will overlap. But as you use the example, like I sing, and I did initially at some point when I was trying to figure out what my passion was, I thought it was to actually branch out and into music, and I started that journey, and I realized no, that's not it. But then but I still sing at church. I still sing with certain ministers and certain people, and I got to eventually realize on that journey was that singing in church or leading praise and worship or leading specials or things of that sort, that platform is okay for me with that gift. I don't believe I am necessarily interested at this point in terms of becoming a recording artist, but I have a gift in that area, and I have a platform to use that gift which is within the church, so I do that. And I also have a gift in speaking to people and encouraging people and coaching people and counseling people. So even though I use the church also as a platform for that, because I'm also in the marriage ministry, I then have my business. So I think my main thing is just knowing that don't think about it in terms of like, what is that one thing I am supposed to be. You can do a couple of things, like Sister Nika said yesterday about how she has like several businesses plus a full-time ministry. So it's just more so of figuring if you know that you have a gift in a particular thing, it's more so just figuring out, okay, how do you channel that gift? How do you use that gift, and what's the platform for that one? Doing that should not stop you from actually also channeling your other gifts.
Thank you. That's interesting. Thank you. Does anyone want to add anything else?
What I was going to add to that also, because I know most women are actually multi-talented, and I know I struggle with that a lot. I'm always having 100 ideas, and I carry a journal everywhere, because I'm driving, I'm getting inspired every time. But I do believe that the key then is to find out one thing that God wants you to do first, and hone on that first, and put all your energy into it, build it to a point whereby you feel like, okay, you got it, and then you can add on to other things. And I'm going to give an example. If you guys look at all the celebrities out there that are maybe singing, they honed on that aspect of their gifting. I don't want to mention names, but they've sung so that they became very popular and they built a household name. After that, they now use that platform to produce clothes, perfumes, different things. A lot of them started charities and all that, but I'm sure they've always had a passion for that, but they were able to discover that one thing first that they were supposed to focus on. Because how we say jack of all trades and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes when we do that, then we're all over the place and we never become very great on one thing. So I guess the key thing is just ask God for wisdom, and also His daily word. Like, at this season of my life, what am I supposed to be doing? For example, if you have young kids and your kids are really little, it might not be time for you to be traveling all over the world when you have kids to tend to, but that gift is something that's still there. As long as you keep it in your journal, it could be something that you're supposed to do in the next 5 years, or maybe 10 years when they're grown. You can keep nurturing it, and when the right time comes, you can actually start.
I like that. Just before I'm going to let you take the next question, I really like that, especially because that reminds me that, and you will hear this a lot this weekend, and I think it's part of the responsibility that lies on all of us. One of the things we want to do in Esther's Preparation Room is, I believe God wants women who He can talk to personally. Remember yesterday, that word kept coming through and we should be able to listen. So one of the things I found out that as women, when we hear from God and know the season that we are in, it also helps us know what we ought to be doing, which is part of what the ministry is about. So like you said, sometimes you get a word, you get inspired, you see a vision of who you should be. But we need to go back and ask the Lord, is this the season for this to be actualized? Are you showing me in advance what is going to happen and I need to prepare? And so that's what I wanted to bring as a follow-up to that question, and I'll let Isioma speak that. Just like we said, you can have different gifts. It can be expressed at different times. It can be expressed. Some gifts can be expressed at the same time. How would you then say you developed and nurtured your gift when you identified it? If I could just say, Isioma, for example, like I mentioned before, we met in 2012 or thereabout. 2012. I went to minister in Atlanta, if I'm correct. We met up, prayed. She shared a few things, it was awesome. We connected, and just. And I'm sure you don't mind me saying that, there were ladies like Isioma. Isioma is, for me, is classic, one of the people that God used for us to start a Stars Preparation Room. I always say that. I spoke to her and I spoke to 2 other ladies, and I carried them in my heart because of the things we shared. And I felt the Lord say, start a prayer ministry. And from when I told her, so I saw Isioma from a very timid lady. She was the first year, she was just very quiet. And she's been in every of our programs. And I saw her go from there to say, in the program, God gave a word. At the point she relocated, at the point she moved, at the point, say, Pastor Nick, I'm setting my first book. Pastor Nick, somebody invited me, got connected with somebody. The next day, Pastor Nick, I'm going to Lagos to do a seminar. Pastor Nick, I'm writing my second book. Just what is that journey of taking that gift? Because you came from a place where you couldn't express your gift. You felt you were limited by the challenges you had gone through. So how did you come out of that and develop that gift to the point where you've been to brand yourself?
So the really first thing is developing a relationship with Christ. I think more than ever before, more than anything else, I believe that once you take care of what's going on the inside, then it's easier for what God has given you to be expressed on the outside. So starting by, what question she asked me, so when I met Pastor Nika in 2012, then I had just come out of leading the choir. I sing. Most people don't know that now about me, but I did lead the choir for about 4 years in Birmingham. And I had just moved to Atlanta. The Lord told me to move. And then when the Lord told me to move, where I was, people felt like, oh, you're leaving. But when I moved, I got to Georgia, the Lord said, don't do the choir. I want you to go and start working in the homeless ministry at the church. So when I got to the homeless ministry in Atlanta, then I would go there and the people that are supposed to show up wouldn't show up. So then I would have to organize the whole place. And the next thing, I'm preaching the word to the homeless guys. And then by preaching the word to the homeless guys, I'll be hearing God telling me things about them. And I ministered, and some of them would just raise their hand, I want to give my life to Christ. And then the first couple of times that happened, I went home like, man, what just happened here? But one thing that I learned through that season was that, okay, yes, I used to sing in the choir, but there are other things that God had planned for my life. And so when I realized that, I don't think that happened by accident, because that was where I first began to develop. I realized that God had a teaching gift in me, a speaking gift in me, and I needed to be led by the Lord. So that made me start reading a lot. Then I first read the book, Kenneth Hagin, How to be Led by the Holy Spirit. And that changed my walk with Christ, because the Holy Spirit is the one that will equip you. Like she said, I used to be timid. I don't think even sometimes I'm like, oh boy, I look at who I used to be and the boldness that God gives me now, anytime He gives me a stage. It's the Holy Spirit. I began to develop my walk with Christ intentionally. I had to change associations. I had to find friends who were also wanting to do something significant with their life. I had to change my circle completely, and I was okay with being by myself. I wasn't interested then in getting married. Because I knew that was not the season for me. So I spent the time developing who I was on the inside, and it could be lonely. That's the truth. And so then, 2013. The Lord told me, Issy, I want you to move again. And this time, I didn't have a choice whether I was going to move or not. I had to move because everything I was doing then in Georgia, my immigration papers had just got cut off. And then now this job is telling me, hey, move, I'm going to file your green card for you. So then I had to move by force. But then when I moved to Houston, in 1 year, God gave me my immigration papers. So everything that I was looking for was on the path that God had prepared for me. And when I got to Houston, I just went into an assembly one day, and the lady's like, hey, began to speak, that's why, prophets, we shouldn't take what's going on here this weekend as a joke. when Pastor Nick here ministers to you about the gifts that God has put in you, it's not a joke because God is using her to show you what's inside of you. I walked into this African American assembly, then I just moved to Georgia. The next thing I went to the back. I used to try to hide. I would go and just sit in the back. I'd just be praising and worshiping. This lady just came up to me and just put her hand on my belly. Everything God has in you, come out. I was looking at her like, okay, I just came to hide in the back. But from then on, God began to do new things in me. And really the things the potentials that God had, books I began to write and write. And through that season, it was very lonely because I would just sit in my house. I had no friends in Houston. I just moved and I was just trying to pick, where I wanted to be comfortable, the church, the association, the friendships, So I would sit there and I would write. But that lonely season was important because I read so many books then. I watched so many YouTube videos. It was a birthing season.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. That's such a praise God. Yes, yes. And I don't need to, because I know there's so much coming out of here that I don't want us to miss. There was something, and you talked about just now that, not only did God start to use, first of all, the place of the prophetic. So when you have a prophetic word, sometimes you know it, but you need the place of a prophet to bring it out, which is one of those things, and that's why tomorrow's impartation and some of the things that will be happening even from this evening going forward is so strategic. Because at times you need that call to come out. You need that release. You need something that you go through that process of, okay, I've started to identify, but the power for it to come. And I love what you said, because just like Jesus Christ came out of the Jordan and was led into the wilderness, sometimes we go through those moments as well. Some people might feel as if you're in a wilderness. You might feel as if, things are not too clear, but it is a preparation time. So I like some of the things you said. Please bear with me. There's so much. I want to make sure I capture a lot of things. So you started to read, you started to spend time, you started to get information and start maximizing the things that you have. But, Topa, you said something about one of my biggest issues was I didn't feel qualified and I had to get knowledge. Even when you got the knowledge, what other limitations and how do you overcome fear? Because Isioma started with something, I believe that's one of the things, the platform that came in her place, in her situation, was go help in the homeless department. If you agree with me, that's a very unglamorous place to work in. And then people are not showing up. But can you imagine that platform led to Bible study and for her to develop to write? So what would you say that, although there was fear, what did it push and what did it birth out of you?
So everything that you said was, I think the only thing I would just touch on or add to it was, the most I can think of when it comes to what God is saying to you and to get into that place to actually actualizing it is, at least for me, when I read the story of David and how he was anointed but he didn't become king overnight. And some of us, I guess, understanding that there is, we get a word, and we expect the word to just actualize tomorrow. But there's a process that God has to take us through. When I got that release or that word from God, when I was praying as to starting what to do and what I really wanted to do, one of the things that God said to me was, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. And I was like, okay, I really want to, this is something that I feel like I'm gifted in, I really want to do, but that fear was a huge struggle for me. And I feel like whenever people deal with fear, you sort of, first of all, it doesn't give room for faith when you're walking by fear. But then when you really want to tackle it, for me, I had to eventually ask myself, what is the root cause of my own fear? Not wanting to fail, and also in some way being tied to a little bit of wanting people's approval. When God tells you what it is that He's, gifts that He's placed in you, and you eventually start, which is I think something I want to also remind for me that I had to do, is
having to remember my 3 W's, which was what God told me. You have to remember who called you and who He's called you to. You have to remember what He's called you to do and why He's calling you to do that. So whenever I dealt with fear, mine was, the root cause of that was one, not wanting to fail, and also not having that confidence. For some people, you have had dreams or visions of actually speaking to people, but you've second-guessed yourself when you feel like you might not necessarily have that level of confidence to stand. But if that's the case for you, it's just more so trying to figure out, okay, what exactly is holding you back? Mine was just, I felt like I just didn't have the knowledge. I also felt because I was branching into relationship coaching, I just got married, sort of, just 2 years ago. But I got married 2 years ago, so a little part of me was also curious as to if I'm going to speak to people about relationships, will people look at me like, girl, you just got married, sit down, like, what is it that you're gonna say? And so those were the things I struggled with in the area of fear. And the only way really, besides figuring out the root cause of it, the real way to tackle fear is you just have to pray it through. You have to really start to drench yourself and move yourself from a place of fear to a place of faith. Like remembering who called you and understanding that the person that called you didn't make a mistake. You know, God didn't make a mistake when He called you into what He's calling you to do. And He really is your Father really is the owner of the universe. So, you know, you following Him and being in line with what He's calling you to do, you're actually in a win-win situation. So for me, because it was a place of not knowing or feeling like not knowing enough, I then eventually went to school. I researched for what different types of certifications are out there for coaching. And when I found one that I thought was similar to what it was I wanted to do, I eventually started, I signed up for the program. When I signed up for the program, I also started talking to different people about actually starting a business and starting to try to figure out my brand and branding myself and what exactly is it that God has, my audience, what exactly is it He's calling me to do, trying to find a name that matched that message that God wanted me to put out there. And then once I did that, the next thing was I realized I was going to have to speak. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I need to, if you struggle with speaking, then Toastmasters, sign up for a Toastmasters class. I went to a few Toastmasters sessions. I went to a few Toastmasters sessions so I could actually really try to, develop that gift of speaking or that area of speaking. But I think the bottom line of really the main thing is just once you have a word that God has given you or a gift that He's placed in you, understand that you get that word, but there's a process to actually building and developing and honing in on that craft. The more you're in tune with what it is that God is saying to you and the Spirit is saying to you, it will help you know what your next steps are. My next step was to go take a class, a certificate, but not all coaches are certified. So that might not be someone else's next step, but that was what God released me to do. So just stay in tune with what it is that the Spirit is saying to you.
Amen. Amen. That's awesome, isn't it? I hope you're getting blessed. Please feel free, like I mentioned before, if you want to make a comment or something you can identify with, just feel free. What I'm doing is if I see you at the mic, then I pause and let you speak or ask a question. And we're throwing it open. So please feel free to just come towards the mic and then we will take those questions. Because I've caught you, but you have to come to the mic because you sit up there. So if we're speaking, if you stand by the mic, we know that we're going to come to you. Don't feel shy. Just stand there quietly, and then we'll just take you. Okay.
I am shy.
Okay. Just tell us your name.
Good morning. My name is Ayo. God, sorry, I'm shaking. I wanted to piggyback on what Tammy had said. She said something that reminded me of what I've been doing. The past month, I was reading through the book of Samuel, and I was reading about the story of David. How Saul was anointed, and God spoke that David was going to take over. God gives you a word, and sometimes we think that once that word has come, it's done. Mm-hmm. But there is work between that word and the manifestation of what God has said. When David got the word that he was going to rule, every time he went into battle, or every time he needed to go into battle, he always went back to God Father, should I go and fight these Philistines? God, should I take the land? Sometimes when we get a word, we just take it and we run. But we don't remember that we have to still talk to God every step of the way. God, I'm about to go into this meeting. Is it beneficial for me or no? I just wanted to say that because, for me at least, I figured if I hear something, it's time for me to just hit the ground and run and keep going. And many times we're running in the wrong direction. David always stopped every time, even when the people around him, and that's why we need to also watch the people around us. Even when some of his army would tell him, Saul is here, you need to kill him. He recognized that that was somebody who was anointed by God. So he was not going to touch Saul. And every time they told him, let's go do this and all that, he didn't do it. Also, David never rested on his laurels. You know, he never sat on the fact that he took down Goliath. He never sat on the fact that he had beat the Philistines each time. He always went back to God and said, God, should I go and do this? So I think that's one thing I wanted to share, because when I realized that in Book of Samuel, it was so amazing. I'm not using the picture of yesterday to decide my action for today. I'm always going to go back to God. And in regards to business, last comment, I'm sorry. I remember one time I was talking to Pastor Wiley, and I was like, you know, I really want to have a business, I want to do something. And he said that God had asked him one question: what's that you have in your hand? And it took me back to Exodus 4, when God was talking to Moses, and you know, he said, who's going to believe me for what I'm doing or whatever? And he said, what's that you have in your hand? Sometimes what we need to thrive, or the gifts that we need, sometimes we're looking for something grand. We want something that's going to put us in the limelight. But there are certain things that God has given to us that's actually pretty innate. It's already in your hands, and we don't want to use it because we don't think it's good enough. That's why we have to always go back to God, for God to say, this is it. If I tell you this is it, all you have to do is just trust me along the way. I am going to get you to the end point. But we just always have to remember that when that word comes, there's work with the word. When the children of Israel were going to bring the wall of Jericho, even after the wall came down, they still had to go in and fight to take the land. So there's always work afterward.
Thank you very much. Wow. Excellent. Excellent. You know, before I come to the other, we did an activity. Some of you may not have been here earlier on, but I really love that icebreaker. And it was like, if you had $1 million, what would you do with it? Now, we heard some amazing things, beautiful things that we heard. So, but you know, it's so amazing that for everyone that we were hearing, I kept hearing, but we can start that with $0. And that's where we really need God's help. We can start it. It's just that with $1 million, we hope to start it huge, big, but it's not always like that. So can I just ask everybody for 2 minutes? Because it was going to be part of my questions, but before I do that, just based on what Ayatunde said, if I should ask you, Elisha, when the woman came to meet him and said, I'm in debt, my husband is dead, I don't know what to do, they want to take my sons away. Elisha said, what do you have in your house? So this morning for 2 minutes, can you please write what you have in your house? I know. What do you have in your house? In other words, if someone says, something needs to happen, I need to move forward, I need to move my life forward, and say, okay, what do you have? I don't want to even go deeper. I'm just going to ask you, what do you have in your house? What do you possess? 3 things that you can just write. What do you possess? And I'll look for 2 people who will be bold enough to say what do they have in their house. And we're going to see if that falls into the category. So this is just a little quick one. 1 more minute. If 5 things come to you, feel free, but I just want you to find 3. And if you can't find 3, that's okay. I'd like to know what the 2 you have. Okay, 30 seconds more. We don't have our tables here. Thank you, everybody. Do you mind if I reach out to Omaniola's table? Can somebody, I know they were like, oops. Can anybody there maybe just boldly tell us, maybe what you have in your house? What do you have? What did you write? Yes, go ahead.
Well, I don't really have much at this point, but
You can stand up and then project.
I said I don't really have much at this point in my life, but what I have is my hands. I'm really creative, so
Yes.
that's all.
So you have your hands that are creative. Creative in doing what? Good, yes. As you can see, your hair is beautiful. So at this stage, you're a student, but the one thing you can do, in other words, your hands makes you money right now. Your hands provide for you right now. If anything happens, you can put out an ad. To God be the glory. If you can make hair, God has really blessed you because God gave you millions of customers automatically, right, with women. Okay, thank you very much. Who else? So she can find one thing for now. Who else can say something? Yes, ma'am. Okay, we'll have, yes, and then we'll go to, yes, feel free to go to the mic.
Good morning, everybody. So I wrote 3 things down.
Tell us, first of all.
All right, my name is Toyande Momire. I'm from Delaware. So I wrote 3 things down, and I'm not going to go into the details about it. So first, I have a pen to write down God's vision for me. Habakkuk 2:2. Write down the vision for yet. You guys know the gist of that, right? And the second part is I have a prayer room. And thirdly, thankfully to God be the glory, I have a spouse that I can bounce all my ideas with.
Okay. Now, those are 3 very critical things. What you have. How can you convert, if you were to now say, I'm going to convert those 3 things into a product?
All right. So it's actually been converted into a product. So technically, it's so funny. So I'll mention something. I'm catering towards Generation Z. They're technically teenagers. They're from ages 13 through 19, right? So to get the inspiration to kind of speak to them and to stand out, to kind of minister to them, I need a pen first to write down the vision God has given to me. And also to pray as well. You can't lead people without praying because you need the ability to spiritually connect to them. Physically, we're all here, but the reality is our spirit is maybe elsewhere. So having the ability to kind of pray and sort after God is really critical. That's why I wrote the second part. And the spouse part, you need support. We all need support system. You cannot do it alone. Even Jesus had his 2 favorite people, right? So therefore, that's why I wrote those 3
Thank you
things
so
down.
much. Thank
Praise
you.
God.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I just want to piggyback on what she said.
Do you mind
about
standing for a
the-
second,
okay,
project?
sorry.
Thank you so much.
About the support system that she just mentioned. And when the prophet said, go and borrow. If she didn't have the support or if she didn't have the people around her, she would not have been able to borrow from anyone. So yeah.
I really love that. Thank you so much because sometimes, especially for us as women, and I can identify with Tony because she's married, she has little children. So at times, if she wants to, we were chatting on Messenger, and we haven't spoken in probably a year and a half. I said, oh my goodness, if I had known that I've made arrangements, blah, 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 walking and I see her here. So she's supposed to be somewhere, so I know she's probably changed her plans to come. But a lot of us, do you know that right now, we may not have financial cash, but we have relationships. So that's the key thing. Some of us, we have support. Some of us, we have friends we can leave our children in and go and volunteer and speak there. Sometimes we don't convert intangible things to tangible. So that's where I was going with that. And so that's why that was very critical. And so when Diola spoke, something you said, I really love that. You said, she started off with the same process. Because if you notice, there's a trend, there's a process with everything everyone is saying. That all of us can then realize that when we see that there's a process, then this shows us how God moves. So let me ask you, Diola, when you then realize, that God had given you these resources and the rest of it, and you started years ago, what did you do when, I'll use the word, when your gift, or should I ask you, have you ever gone to a place where you feel your gift was rejected?
Actually, no.
It's a question. Yes.
Well, actually, I take it back.
Because I was going to
I
say
take it back. Well, maybe when you say rejected, as far as maybe I ask for something and I get a no.
It could be something you needed, something you wanted to use to express the gift, to do certain things, something you felt was a pushback to what you were trying to do or the vision you had in your heart.
Okay, couple of things. I think recently, when I started the new initiative with the women between 35 to 50, I had to do a lot of reaching out to companies to sponsor. I had to do a lot of just sharing the vision. The good thing is that a lot of people actually were excited about it. A lot of companies came on and sponsored our last event, but I got a lot of no's also. And even though a lot of people reach out and said, oh my gosh, how do you guys get money, Washington, Nordstrom, all this been partnering with you? I got more no's than I got yes. But I didn't focus, it took me a while to remember that. Because when you, and I think that's a word for someone, that just keep going on, and you might have to go through 10 no's to get one yes. But when you get that one yes, you forget about all the different no's that you've gotten. The second thing is also maybe with some of my friends. I know when I shared the vision of some of them, I thought it was crazy. Like, are you kidding? What do you mean by 35 to 50? This is already grown. Or, like just different feedback here and there, which I politely thank them for their opinion. And the next thing they saw was a flyer. So just also encourage someone that not everybody within your circle would support what you're doing. It could only be your spouse, it could be your parents, it could be your friends, it doesn't matter. Because I always say that when God gives you a vision, I don't think he does a town hall meeting to announce that I'm going to give you a vision and this is what it's going to be. He gives it to you. It's your job to make it plain, obviously, so that people that are meant to be helpers of your destiny will be able to identify themselves. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, because there are different dimensions to it. Thank you so much. Yes, yes. Yes, please, yes. Thank you, Lami. Oh, let me let you introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Lami Quadri. I just recently got married. I was Aurora before, so yeah. I just have to say that because I'm not used to it. Because I went somewhere and my husband was like, "You're not that name anymore." Okay. I just wanted to say something. I learned so much from a lot of what you guys have been saying so far. So bravo. One of the things that someone said, I don't know who said it. It was something about you have a word and it doesn't automatically just come into being, and that was kind of like a aha moment for me right there, because I got a word years ago, and because I didn't see it happening, I just felt it wasn't a word for me, So I have to go back to God and say, oh, is that a word for me? I felt it was a word for me. Okay, I'm not going to digress, but I wanted to point on certain things that was said here about, one of the things is fear and friendships. And I read a lot, my profession, but I also read a lot. But one of the things that I've learned a lot is the friendships that you keep. Those can make you and those can break you. Recently, I went through I'm still going through that, but recently it's better because of the friendships that I have. So one of my very good friends, Yele, she's right there, she just came to, she's like, God has been telling us to do our plans, not just any plan, but a measurable. So we have this SMART plan. So you have a measurable goal, you have those things. And I was like, that's so good, let's do that. And then we started, and I realized that I have been bitten down so much with something about talking about when you get no's. I've been bitten down so much about a vision that I had that I didn't think the vision was for me anymore, okay? I went through obstacles and obstacles and obstacles, and it seemed like maybe that was not what God had planned for me. And then I went back to my notes, and something from EPR actually, and said that if you feel like you easily give up, then that's not your vision. That's not your purpose. A purpose is something that there's the drive in you that there's a passion that doesn't. And something that one of my friend again told me, she's like, before you got to this point, did you not pray about it? Before you got to this point, did you not seek God about it? So I had to go back to the very beginning to see where he had brought me from to where I am right now. So it might be hard right now, but I'm moving forward. I just couldn't see it. I've been focused on where I was at that particular point in time. So when she was talking about, have you had no's? I've had no's. I've had struggles, right? To the vision that I know that God has for me, right? Which comes in with a fear, because that fear is crippling. It's something that it is, but then you get so much challenged and you feel like, okay, maybe this is not what it is, or somebody tells you that you can't make it, or you tell yourself that I'm not worthy of it, I'm not qualified enough, I'm not this, I'm not that. You have to move past it, and a lot of it is overcoming it, but you have to have help.
Okay, that's fantastic. Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much. A lot of richness coming. Thank you. Yes, okay.
Completely agree with everything you said. I just also want to throw in that it's very important to write a plan. The Bible says to write down the plan, and write down the vision. But I think eventually we have to get to that place where we move. And because fear can be crippling, if we eventually, at least because it was something I had to do for me, you eventually have to realize that you move from that place of needing the permission of your emotion to move. Sometimes you have to do it afraid. Sometimes you don't feel ready, but you just have to move. Like God, I mean, if you think about all the excuses Moses gave God when God was telling Moses to go, and he eventually did, but it doesn't actually tell us that when he went, he felt confident now. He probably was still doubting himself, but then you just keep going. You just keep going.
That's it. Thank you. That's a good one. Okay, so just real quick to add on to what Lammy said about relationships. You know, relationships is social capital for impact. When I think about the man who had his 4 friends dig through the roof to bring him down, I think that's what relationships would do for you in your place of purpose. It's not, honestly, I think many times we're very sentimental about if you're with a circle of people and all you're getting is, who does she think she is? And what, you are doing too much, what is all this? Don't distance yourself from that. You have to be very intentional, because the more you feed yourself with that kind of association of people who don't believe in you, the more you begin to feed yourself, you question yourself, you doubt, and sometimes it could even be mentors. Sadly, yes. Some people are not secure enough with your growth, and it could be even siblings too, sadly. But we really have to know what God says. There's a verse that says, I call them alone. You need relationships with people who see you as capable, because it affects how they deal with you. If I don't believe in you, I'm not going to, every time you talk and I just, she has come again. But you know what? You really, sorry about that. But it affects you. Yes, because when I first started out, I know Pastor Nikia was one of those people that I could always send a text to, I could always call, and I knew she was supporting me. So it was easy for me to keep going. And my parents, oh boy, they're amazing. But then there were some people who I'd considered mentored, who had known me for a very long time. And I remember what one lady told me, and it affected me for like 6 months. I couldn't do anything. She said, stay down and doing purpose things. Don't go and get married. I looked at her like, oh God. And this was my pastor's wife, the place that I'd grown for like 6 years. I'd served in that ministry. And I sat back like, God, are you telling me something? And what this lady saying to me? And funny enough, marriage was not even pertinent on my mind that time. Like, is there something wrong with me? I wasn't interested in getting married at that time because I knew I wasn't ready. But that statement crippled me for months. For more than 6 months, I couldn't do anything. And then, what? I'm sorry I dissociated myself completely. But, if I see, I greet you and all of that. But I will not come and tell you this is what God is telling me, because you're not. Yes. Yes. Because I know the 6 months when I had to deal with, a lot of insecurities, a lot of doubt, a lot of, am I in the right place? What am I doing? And so sometimes you just know the people that are for you, and God will bring you even more people. And as you go, and I think it's something that because when I did my program in Abuja, I did a survey for the young people in the room. I asked, what was one thing that was stopping you from stepping out into purpose? More than half of the survey notes said the opinions of others. Because we're human, we're relational. You tell me something, I might not know, but it's either affecting me positively or negatively. So it's not okay to distance yourself.
That's amazing. Thank you. I'm sitting here taking so much in. It's unbelievable. So I'm really so bear with me. I'm listening and I'm taking so much in. There's something the other wants to say.
Sorry, just give me a second. So back to what they said. One thing also is that at every level you go to, you need to, of course, we'll talk about at every level, new friendships and all that. So a lot of times, how Abraham was leaving, God told him to leave everybody behind, Lot and all those people, and go beyond. And it was, struggling with that. One thing I want to encourage is that going to the top is going to be a lonely journey, obviously. People that you've been used to since childbirth or whatever would not understand all the time, but that's okay. So a couple of things I wanted to also share is that you want to look at your support system. and it could be your friends, your family, whoever it is. You also want to have a mentor at every point in time, a coach and a sponsor. They're all different things. Most people kind of think they're all the same, but they're not. And you can have you have a mentor as far as a spiritual mentor. Your spiritual mentor doesn't mean they're your business mentor.
Yes.
Someone can be spiritual and not be business minded, and that's totally okay.
Yes.
You can also find someone that's maybe a mentor in relationships. I know that when I was about to get married, I started watching you. I think I spoke to you a little bit there. So you want to make sure that you identify those kind of people in your life. A coach is someone that has done or is doing what you would like to do. And it doesn't matter if they're younger than you. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with their skill set and their results. So that's something. And the last one is a sponsor. A sponsor is someone that actually can put a word in for you. There are the people that actually have a seat at the table. And when people are making decisions, they can say, you know what, I know someone, Tammy is a relationship coach. I can actually talk to her, or you guys should meet her. And that could be in your job, it could be in your business. And so I'm just saying that because a lot of, and I'm trying to sound funny, what I've realized, a lot of people stay just within the same circle, and they're not expanding their mindset. I always like to go into a room whereby everybody else is doing something great. So that way I don't feel like I've arrived, or I don't feel like on the seat of the line, I'm the one, I'm the queen of all. So just throw that out there that when you guys leave here, look within your network and start going to business meetings, Chamber of Commerce. Just reach out, go to a room where you don't know anyone and pick brains, give out your business cards, talk to people. So while you're praying, that way, that's how God connects you to people. God doesn't throw all this results or all this into your mind. He doesn't throw things from the sky, pretty much. Your blessings come through your relationships. And that's why we hear the word, your network is your network.
Okay, so that's session 3, by the way. No, thank you so much. Because when the Lord directed us, we looked at different things. So it's quite interesting. Now you will find that in each session, there's a thread. I hope you, and I believe you will really catch it. And I'm going to let you say something. When I think it was Dio that said, that I'm young at this stage, so I may not have a lot of things, because I know you all have something on your list. I want you to think about it. We'll throw out questions like that. But one of the things, for example, that I know that somebody who is young, who is, either, in college or at that point of going to their education, there's no better time than to begin, because God can give you 15 things, even at that age. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? But He will just show you a vision of who you should be, but you will then grow into it. And it doesn't matter how old we are. And which is, I won't say too much about it because of our next session, because God will show it to you. So I want us to really look critically when we said the 3 things that we have, what those 3 things are. And I'll let us take the next question.
Well, it's not so much of a question, but kind of sort of to add on to what Izzy said. So right when she started talking about it, and that mentor that you may have in your life that kind of sort of immobilizes your hopes and your dreams, I think it's important for us to talk about the recovery from that. So maybe that's something, Tammy, that you can lead into, because it's a relationship thing. Because I had a similar experience where I had written a book with somebody that I considered to be a mentor. This is somebody that I was praying with, and this individual just, she couldn't handle what God was revealing to her about me. And then in turn, we had the eclipse recently. Okay. So she literally wanted to eclipse my entire life. So and God is such an amazing God, because He, regardless of whatever is going on or wherever you think you need to be, right in the nick of time, He removes you from a place. So a lot of you guys may remember this space. I'm slightly familiar to you because I was here for a year. And in this year of being here in Maryland, I sat because I was trying to recover from the eclipse. And I had a lot of negative emotions towards that individual. Even though I prayed every day, I was like, Lord, help me to love your child because I know you created her. But when I would see this woman, and she would still try to act like she was connected to me, telling people this, that, and the third about me, the book that we wrote, my friends would call me and say, she's not even saying that you're a co-author, all kinds of foolishness. And so at one point I was like, you know what, I don't even want to promote this thing, because if I promote this, then I'm promoting her, and I don't want to promote her. But God had to pull me to a place to understand that, we're all created in His image. So as I see you, I'm looking at God, or I should be looking at God, because I have the mind of Christ. And He helped me to realize that, okay, when you're starving her, you're starving yourself, right? So it took me a long time, basically, to heal from that. But I think it's important for everybody in the room to hear it, because we're going to have successes. But then we're also, in those successes, we're going to have people that are just, allowing the devil to use them. While you may take that time to step away from the limelight or whatever it is that you're doing to get yourself together, you still have to understand, how do you do that quickly? How do you make that quick recovery? Because that's not gonna be the first person, nor is she gonna be the last person that I'm gonna deal with like that. So the question is, how do you help people? I know it for myself, so that's gonna be different for me, but you have to have a quick recovery, because the 6 months for me was a year and some change. And then when God moved me back home to Atlanta, he called my brother. My brother was like, "What you doing? Why are you not, this thing is supposed to be moving. Why are you not doing it?" And instantly I did it. So on the other side of that too, just I guess to bolster that point, the revelation that I got is that resources are attracted to movement. Okay. So if you're not moving, your muscles are atrophying and you're losing muscle mass, and all those ideas and wonderful things that are coming your way, because the energy to bring them to life is not being used, and that energy dissipates and it goes away. But all of that stuff is tied to our emotions, and so if we don't know how not to react, because at the end of the day, that's what it's looking for. When you react, you've now dispersed your energy to deal with things that are unnecessary, they're distractions.
Thank you.
And then, so.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. You know what fantastic thing? Just before we take the next, please come to the mic. That's right. But I just wanted to, so I don't forget. Yes, Shadi, because unfortunately you missed. That's my baby. She'd like to harass that because I told her keep us to time. So we need to just take 2 more. Okay. We've been hearing this a lot, and we probably will have to deal with it in our 3rd segment. So I'm going to take some of those questions, because there's some things saying here. I had a question, but I just feel the Lord said, let people talk, because that question goes into the 3rd segment. And that's this thing about women. Women, our relationships. How, because of the power that women carry, the enemy easily comes, because we are natural relationship builders. So you tend to find women, instead of coming together to build together, they pull down. And I'm going to be addressing that, especially because in that 3rd session, it's critical. Part of what we're doing in Esther's preparation is because women came together. When Diola and I were talking about, I wanted her to come over, what she does and the people she ministers to are very similar to the same thing. But we're 2 different lights, and we both have our place in the sky. So there's absolutely no reason. So we're going to be dealing with some of those issues when you feel overshadowed or controlled, and the negative energy that comes from it. And that's why, if I can, before we just take questions, I didn't want to forget, we cannot deploy, because in deploying, God will open resources. But for you to be effective in deploying, I just want to put out there, we need the fruit of the Spirit. That is one thing that as women we must understand, that no matter what we want to birth, we must first birth the fruit of the Spirit. Because when things come, negative things come, we now need to battle it in the Spirit. Your warfare, at times love is what you use to fight war. At times joy is what the tool today for fighting war. I remember one day that we said, during the fasting and prayer, that the word was worship. That day, the day started off and I was getting angry with things happening. And I just finished waking up in the morning to type all that funky, look for a picture or anything. So ladies, let's all worship the Lord this morning. 2 hours later, I was squeezing my face, I was angry. Because the word that was supposed to go out was challenged. So those are things that we need to come into and discuss. So I'll let Tetiti and Ikepo just take us through either questions or comments briefly, and then we'll run.
A few comments, but you actually just said one of the things I wanted to say. But we are all gifted. We are all unique in our own ways. And when you mentioned that that thing took you aback for almost 6 months, this is why we need to, in every step of the way, don't leap before you actually connect with God, because God will send you to your own Elizabeth. He will not send you to, of course, Joseph had a dream, and he shared with his father. The father understood, he was ready to support him, but at the same time, he shared with his brothers. And if Joseph had not held on, to that vision that God gave him, he will have lost it along the way, because now he had to go through the desert, through, all of that to get to where God is going. taking him. But, you know, in every instance, especially when he was faced with harassment every day from a pretty lady, you know, so the vision, because of the process he went through, could have been truncated. But thank God he held on to the word. So I'm just encouraging us, whatever your gift is, find your Elizabeth. Don't just share with everybody. Not everybody will catch your vision. And if God has given you something, it's because it's on the inside of you. If it's not showing right now, you know, seek him for it. And at every point in time, look at somebody you think I can respect, who is in this field that is doing what I want to do. Look at them, pray about it. Don't jump. Take your time, because, you know, relationship is everything, like they said, but you need to, it's not everybody that will walk with your own vision. You need to connect with the right people. Find your own Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just quickly add to what she said, and I guess to touch on what, because I was going to talk about knowing who to share with, per se, in terms of, it's not sometimes we get so excited, we get a word, we get so excited, and we just want to tell everybody, but that's not necessarily what God is calling us to do. But I also believe, and it's something that eventually with my business, I had to, my plan or my purpose, my passion, I had to eventually come into with not necessarily needing the approval of people, understanding that even everybody did not accept Jesus, and not everybody wanted, and still today, not everybody wants Jesus. So there is a place of knowing that there will be a level of rejection that you will face, and there's a place of being okay with that, because you know the person who has called you and has already approved you, and you have his approval, so it's okay. But when you do get into that space where you trusted someone and they betray that trust, and then it sets you back a bit, there's the part of the recovery process usually has the forgiveness has to be in the process. Understanding that the person is human, and the person might have done it intentionally, the person might not have done it intentionally, but the person is human, and they were speaking out of their own knowledge and out of what they feel that they should say. So there's a place of forgiving that person, because without forgiveness, it's going to be hard for you to trust somebody else again. And as you said, there's understanding that also a lot of the things that are coming at us, we have to combat them with the fruit of the Spirit and what God is actually telling us to do. So that's just what I was going to add.
Thank you so much. And we'll take it.
Thank you. So thanks very much for doing this. I wanted to say that. And well, I guess God's Spirit really is one, because my question is somewhat related to what Sister Titi just said. But it is a little bit different, because I'm like obsessed with practical. So I think we've talked a lot about fear, about like kind of stepping out of your comfort zone, I guess. But some of us kind of have the opposite problem. I really related with what you said yesterday, Pastor Nikki, about needing prudence and not just jumping. Like, God gave me this, and ooh, awesome. You know, I'm all over it. And I guess for me recently, God laid very strongly on my heart that there's a dream and a vision that he's given to me that I've been praying extensively about. I mean, quite frankly, I realized I've become kind of obsessed with it. And it was God telling me I'd turn that dream and vision into an idol. It hadn't happened. I mean, this is something like 6-7 years ago that I got the vision. And so for me, waiting for that was so hard, and it's been so hard. And so, you know, being in the place of prayer, praying extensively, talk to people, study, like, you know, always trying, you know, in areas that I feel like God's leading me to step into that place. And it's just not happening. And when God hit me with that log, like, this is your thing. This is now your God. It was, you know, mind-boggling. And I was like, all right, so what do I do now? Like, how do I kind of step back from this thing that has been so heavy in my heart for so long? Yeah, so that's kind of the question.
I love that. Thank you.
I'm sure everybody has their own different
Thank you.
perspectives about this. I remember at some point, I think earlier in the year when I was talking to you about like when you have a passion about something and you're really chasing it, and how do you catch yourself when your focus is actually shifting from the giver of the dream to the dream itself. And I personally think, at least for me, I think that the key thing, and at least for me, the practical way, is to really, if you're in tune with God and staying in tune with what His Spirit is saying, it's easier for you to keep your eye on Him than the dream, because you eventually realize that the dream can be realized in different ways. And for today, at least the way I've seen it and the way God has shown me is, I'm doing what I am doing now in this particular way, in this particular format, and with this particular market. But if I'm in tune with Him, I have to know when it's time to move to another method, another weapon. So if we focus on what God is telling us about the vision, about what He's telling us to do, it's easier to know when it's the weapon of your weapon of choice now is music, or your weapon of choice now is an arrow, your weapon of choice now is love. The weapon will the weapon will change. The dream, the main focus at the end of the day the target stays the same. As life is going on, and as our journey is happening, we will have God will reposition us in different ways to still keep hitting that focus. But if we are in tune with what His Spirit is saying and with what God is showing us, it's easy for us to switch methodologies. It's easy for us to switch weapons. It's easy for us to switch focus a bit, or switch our position, because we know that at the end of the day, this is what God is telling us to do. But if we're so in tune with the actual thing that we're doing, it's easier for us to miss it. Pretty much just knowing that there's a season. Our dreams, our purpose, everything has its seasons, and it's easy for us to miss the seasons that are coming our way if we're not necessarily in tune with what God is telling us to do, not in tune with the Holy Spirit telling us that this is the season to wait, this is the season to move, this is the season to speak to this person, this is the season to activate certain connections that you have. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, we'll let you release your mind and I'll round up.
Okay, I was going to, I'm trying to keep eye contact with her. But I think I can understand, I can kind of feel you, because I know that I'm very passionate. I'm a type A personality. So I'm very driven with dreams or goals, and I go after it like crazy. But like I said earlier, sometimes we also have to understand the season in our lives. And if you feel like God has shown you this goal and vision, you want to check with Him if that's something you should be doing right now. Or maybe this time, I think I talked about it earlier, this time is time for you to nurture it. Maybe read on it, like you said, but not get so caught up in it that, I used to be so passionate about what I was doing that I'll forget to eat. I'm not kidding, like, before I got married, obviously it was just me, so it didn't matter. I could drive to Atlanta, I'll go to, if I said conference going to Florida, I could get in my car and go. When the husband and the kids started coming in, it was a little different ballgame. Even if I forget to eat, and my kid starts to cry, obviously I have to remember to get on the computer to attend to him. So what I'm trying to say is that you want to just find a balance and check and, like, Lord, is this my preparation time? It could be 10 years for some people. It could be 1 year. Once you get that confirmation from Him, it makes it easier a little bit. Number two, and I'm not saying that's the case, it could be that maybe you're focused on one particular way of accomplishing that goal. And maybe that's not what, for example, like she said, you have a purpose, and this is what God has shown you. This is the vision He has for your life. But it could be different platforms. I used to want to be a teacher when I was young. But because I was very brainy growing up, I was an all-A student, I was good at math, automatically I went into engineering. I didn't want to do medicine because I didn't like blood. But guess what? When I did engineering, I don't feel as fulfilled. It brings money in, and I still do it on the side every now and then. But that passion of teaching was still there. So now I'm teaching kids, I'm actually teaching women too. So I'm still fulfilling that purpose of teaching, but I'm not in the classroom. Does that make sense? So it could be like you check and say, Lord, this is what you showed me. Or is this the way I'm thinking about it? Is this the way? Or maybe He wants you to try other things that's leading towards that big vision. Third thing, you also want to check your intention. I've realized that anytime my intention is going from God and it's coming towards me, like I'm going to do this because I'm good at this, I'm going to do this, then things slow down. So check your intention all the time. What's my intention behind this? It's so interesting that even now, before I post something, You know, I'm like, am I posting because I want people to see my blouse that I just got? You know, social media. Am I posting because I ask them to really stay? You know, sometimes people have a new watch, they want to show the watch and say, Jesus is Lord. You know, so I check my intention all the time. You know, I'm being honest. So check your intention and okay, Lord, because if God is trying to let you go through this process, it's kind of like when you know, back in Nigeria, if you don't pass first grade, you don't go to second grade, no matter what. You stay in that first grade until you keep taking that exam over and over, or is it jam? You keep taking it over and over until you pass it. So sometimes in life, God is trying to teach us a lesson, and until we get it, we don't go to the next level, you know? Because He loves us enough that He doesn't want to set us up for failure. If you can't handle something, sometimes He keeps us at this level until we get it. So that way when we get there, our character, our, you know, everything's already in place. So that's, you know,
Just to add on to what she said is, you know, we know the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and we know the works of the flesh. In the journey of purpose, there are times when you're even getting the accolades, and then when you start noticing and becoming prideful, there are some times when, for me personally, I had a time when, okay, things were working out, and then I started believing more in myself. Lord just told me, AC, stop. I took time where I stopped and went back and had to get my focus. And sometimes that happens if you know clearly, nobody can tell you this, but you know when you are stepping more into flesh than into the spirit. So that's where listening to God and making sure that you're still spending time developing yourself in the things of God. You know, could be reading the word more, listening to more music, being very intentional about making sure, because the end goal is that people would come to know the Lord. And so if we're taking the focus of God and bringing it to ourselves, then we're not getting the results that we should be focusing on getting. And lastly, I would want to say that, especially when it comes to getting the results, when you start out, you might fail woefully in the beginning, but there are lessons that you're going to learn on the way. But then the one thing that the Lord is teaching me this year is you are not going out there on your own. God is with you every step of the way, and the resources can come supernaturally. Because that was the one thing that I used to think, okay, you know what? I'm a therapist by training. I would schedule myself. Oh, I would work this. I would be busy because I wanted to get money to publish this or money to do that. So recently, I was working on a project that is going to require a little bit of money. And what the Lord did for me this time was He just supernaturally brought the people. You know what? You're thinking about going to do this. He brought funds from somewhere totally different. And He did that back-to-back 2 days. And when the money came into my account for that project, I sat down like, this is what I've been cracking my head for the past 1 month, trying to calculate, oh, if I do this PRN shift here, I do that contract shift here, or if I start doing this, and you just work yourself out of the will of God, because when you're exhausted, you can't hear God. So that's where believing God for the supernatural on the place of purpose is so important, because the resources you're looking for, God can bring it.
Amen.
He can totally bring the resources.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As you can see, if you were to leave this place is on fire. And we just thank God. I just want to pick on a couple of key things that to round up the. I'm sorry. You see, I thought you wanted to tell me that my time was up. She wanted to say something. Okay.
Just to kind of address what Ikepo asked about, because I've been in a situation where I wanted something and God already gave me the vision for, but I was making it bigger. So He did the same thing. He said, "What are you doing?" So I literally was like, "You can take it away." I had to get to a point where I was more desperate for Him than I was for whatever vision He gave me. And I literally said, "You can have it, Lord. I don't want it if it's not with you." So I constantly had to go back to Him for permission, and I did it daily for like a month. And I said, if this is not what you want for me, I don't want it. And I said it every single day. So even if I didn't believe it the first time, even if I still wanted it more than Him,
as I was saying it every day, it was yielding my feelings to him versus whatever my feelings were compelling me to do. And once you take control, because we're hearing it here, we have control over our feelings, not the other way around. So you have to speak it over yourself or your emotions and say, no, God is first. And that's really what he wants. He wants to be first in everything. He gave you the vision, so it's going to happen. It's just about you making sure that he's number one and reminding yourself and setting your feelings and your mentality about what he wants and what he's already given you. And before long, he came back and he provided everything that I needed concerning
Thank you
it.
so much. Thank you. Wow, thank you so much, everyone. From discovery to deployment. This year, because God said, step into your place. The 3 things, or the 4 things, or the 5 things, or even the 1 thing that you identified on that list, you've already, I got us to do the action because we've discovered something. I'm sure almost like, and if there's anybody who couldn't write something on that list, please see us afterwards. And I genuinely mean that. Because that's part of what, at times you can go through a season where it seems that things are void. So don't sit quietly and say, oh, I don't find anything to write. I don't even know. Just come. Praise the Lord. Because of, so that we can talk about that. The second thing is, link what God has shown you into a plan. Every gift needs a plan for growth. No matter what you are good at, God expects us to refine it. When it was time for the temple to be built, God said, select Oliahab, if I pronounce that name properly. God specifically called people that were skilled. God likes us to use, God likes to use the best. There's a season now, and that's the honest truth. God likes to use the best. Now, the best is not based on man's standard, and it has different parameters. But whatever I give, I remember last year, I think it was last year, that we had this panelist session. I don't know if Stanika will remember. And she said something, and I kept going, because at that time, she would prophesy, and I'm like, that's what I prophesy. So Stanika said, I fasted and prayed for 1 year. Yeah. For 1 year. Now, if you don't know Stanika, it's not, 3 days, first 3 days of Esther's kind of fasting. She goes for long periods. So God showed us, she paid a sacrifice. She stood out, and I said, I can pour this into you. So what sacrifice do we need to make? Both in the spirit, because that's what I believe God is doing with Esther's preparation. That's why today is very practical. Because he opened up. Remember yesterday the word came that things we need to clean up. The doors we need to shut. How we ourselves should not be an enemy to ourselves. Remember we prayed those prayers. That's what today is all about. To really find those things and prepare so that we're ready for the anointing that will take us to the next level. So once the gifts that we've written now, how are we going to deploy it over the next 2-3 years? What everybody in this room, whatever is on your list, must start up in one new dimension in 2018. Oh, that was weak. Because what I'm saying is that you have to step into your place. Whatever you wrote down. So if you said, I can sew, you must have some outfits. Have 5 and call it your collection. Even if it's 1 blouse, 1 skirt that anybody can sew, 1 pair of shorts. Call those things that be not as though they were. So have a plan to grow this gift. Another thing that we really learned from our panelists today is to trust God. When you take that step, God begins to provide. Resources will come. Sometimes even in having this Esther's preparation, we don't know how it will pan out. But God makes a way, God opens doors, God raises people, God does things. So resources will follow when you deploy. When you keep sitting down to say, I'm discovering, but there's a time whether you do it afraid, you just go forward and just deploy in faith in Jesus' name. Another thing is that I noticed that I wanted us to just keep, is to know that we need a close walk with the Lord. Kepa's question has been well answered. But we're going to bring it back because there's a place for showing. But I feel in this room, there are a lot of us that have been, this is not your first rodeo. You've identified some of these things. You've tried it. The discouragement may have come through people, like you said. It may have come through rejection. It may have come through lack of resources. I stepped out in faith. It didn't happen. Like Peter, I wanted to walk on water, but I crashed. And now I'm so afraid, and fear has had us in bondage. Or it could be that you were so passionate about what God gave to you that what God said has become an idol. But what do we do? Just to round up. The word that came to my spirit, and was a word in our 21-day fast, whenever we're in that place, enter into a place of worship. You see, because when we enter into true worship, we then lay everything down. That's where the fire can fall on you, as we're crying out yesterday. That's where God can open your heart. That's where He can reset you. That's where you can then say, when you do true worship, you say, I don't want anything but you. And you lay down the vision, lay down the dream. Your heart is ready to walk away from it. Then God can trust you. And that's what in this hour God is looking for. That's who God wants to anoint and pour His Spirit on in a new way, even in these 3 days. Women who are going to step out with these things. Whatever you have in that list, you're going to create a plan for it. You're going to say, where am I going to deploy it? It doesn't have to be in a glamorous place. It just needs to be in a place that is serving other people. And I know as we go through the other sessions, the Lord will bless us very much.
Amen.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank our panelists. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Yoma. Thank you, Ms. Yoma. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Diola. We really appreciate you. A lot of the ladies here are part of our Esther's preparation room. Some are guests, some of our panelists today are guests, but some of them are also part of this place. Because we wanted to use people that we have relationship, we can see and they've had that work. And we can't pay them for them coming as panelists. But we know that as God has brought them out here, God will establish you. Amen. God will lift you up. Amen. God will take you to higher ground in Jesus' name. It's such a blessing to me this morning, and I know to every one of us. So while the announcement, I want to make sure we take a special picture with you guys. So while we get the announcement, because I believe it's time for lunch, Shade will give us the announcement. I'll just have someone come over to just take our picture, and then we can all just go to our seats. So Shade, yeah.
Hello, ladies. What an awesome session. Can we have another round of applause? Amazing, amazing. I learned so much, so much.